I'm joined now by Kurtis McBride. He's the CEO of Miovision. Hi, Kurtis.
How are you?
Good to see you here. So, how is Miovision supporting the digital infrastructure implementation?
Yeah, I mean, our vision for what the intersection should be built around is the analogy I often use is the smartphone of the intersection. So if you think about the world before you had a smartphone, you used to buy a Motorola flip phone, but you'd also buy a Garmin GPS unit, a calculator, a flashlight, maybe a portable DVD player. And now we buy a single device, like single piece of hardware that can do all of the functions that all of that other hardware used to be able to do, but it can toggle the function of the hardware purely with a software change, right? And then you can extend it to do hundreds of thousands of other things. The intersection, most people have seen the Italian job and assume the intersection is already pretty sophisticated. But it's very much in the pre-smartphone era. So every function you want to add is a new truck roll, a new capital purchase, a new maintenance issue to deal with, new hardware essentially they have to put out there. So our whole vision for the intersection is to provide a single piece of hardware that can do, call it a dozen different things that a city might want to do at an intersection. So it's one capital purchase, one truck roll, and then from that point on, it's essentially installing apps onto the intersection.
How does this make things more safer and efficient?
I mean, one of the things it does is by allowing cities to share capital budgets across, various things that they might want to do. An example would be something called preemption. So fire trucks want to get fast to a scene to respond. Giving them green lights gets them there faster. It also gets them through the network on a more safer basis. So say a city is buying a system to actuate a left turn when someone's waiting to turn left, it knows they're there. That same piece of hardware can be used to deploy a preemption system for a fire truck to get it through safer. So by pooling capital budgets, we allow cities to sort of evolve through the various capabilities you want to add to an intersection much faster, much more cost effectively. And because some of the things we do, I would say probably half of the applications we provide are safety focused, it lets them get to safety outcomes a lot faster as well.
And this isn't just general traffic. This is things like fire trucks and cars and police cars, et cetera.
Yeah, most people think intersection, it's pretty basic, red, yellow, green, cars going through. But when you actually start to think about, like, the intersection is also a metaphorical intersection for all the things that go on in a city, right? It's how public transit moves around. It's how emergency services, freight goods, cyclists and pedestrians, all these things are, and even things like energy consumption. If we have signal networks that are not optimized, we're burning more fuel, we're emitting more emissions. So there's quite a nuanced and dynamic system, and we kind of designed our product, our hardware, and our software to address all the different stakeholders' needs.
Why is access to reliable data so important in the successful implementation of these things?
I mean, data these days, data is almost the blood in the bloodstream of any sort of technology product, and data can be used to train models, like a lot of AI. It's a buzzword these days, but the more data you have, the better data you have, the better you can train models. Data is also super useful for vehicles in the same way that infrastructure is digitizing. Vehicles are also digitizing. Tesla kind of led the way on the software-defined car, but pretty much every OEM now has a software-defined car strategy. Once you make the car a smartphone on wheels, it also wants data, right, to create safer outcomes for drivers. So I think not only is the data, the availability of data really important, but one of the things that we're really passionate about is that the interoperability between vendors is really important. Data needs to be able to move across vendor boundaries. And this industry, given its lineage back to the 20th century, is very much built up around sort of proprietary, lock-in kind of business models. That's changing. I would say, 80% plus of the vendors here really are on side with that value, but there's still some holdouts that we're hoping will eventually come around to sort of a 21st century way of thinking about business.
How do you see this industry developing in the next 5 to 10 years?
I mean, I think one of the things that we think a lot about is, there's two converging trends. So there's something called Vision Zero, which is there's more than 100 public agencies in the U.S. and Canada have now signed on to. Basically, how do we get to zero fatalities on the road, right, is Vision Zero. And then you have level 5 autonomy, which more and more, all I would say now large automotive OEMs are trying to get to level 5 autonomy, which also creates a safer outcome for the driver. And what we're finding now is that with level 5 autonomy, unless you put significant amount of sensors and compute into the car, which is expensive, right? Think of a Waymo vehicle, very expensive to approach. You can't get to level 5 autonomy. So if you try to take a lower cost approach, we're hitting a limit around like level 3 autonomy. So our view is that the infrastructure can be a big help to that. You can basically put the sensors and the compute into the infrastructure and then cost share the output of that back to the vehicles. And this would allow for a $25,000 everyday person autonomous vehicle, because instead of having to spend all of the money in the car for all of the sensors, you can buy a fraction of it and share it back from the infrastructure. So yeah, I mean, data is super important, business model innovation super important, all things that we're really thinking a lot about.
Very interesting. Well, Kurtis, thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Thank you.